The legal envelope hit the mahogany dining table with a sharp, heavy thud. My father didn't look at me with concern. He looked at me with an ultimatum. $180,000 or you pack your things and lose this family forever. My mother kept her eyes glued to her plate, silent, complicit. Across from me, my golden child brother Julian leaned back in his chair with a smug grin, convinced he had backed me into a corner. For 10 years I had been the family safety net, the responsible one who sacrificed her own dreams to bail them out of reckless gambles. But looking at Julian's smirking face, something inside me snapped. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I quietly unclipped my childhood house keys, slid them across the table next to the summons and walked out the front door. 3 days later, my father called me 17 times in a panic, because Julian had lied about who the lawsuit was actually targeting. My name is Claire Henderson. I am 32 years old and for the past 8 years, I have worked 70-hour weeks building my independent architectural consultancy from the ground up. While other people took vacations, I lived on instant coffee and tight deadlines, pinching every penny to create a secure future. My brother Julian took the opposite route. At 28, he lived life like an open tab he expected someone else to settle. Every get-rich-quick scheme, failed crypto venture, and abandoned startup was met with my parents' blind applause and open checkbook. My father, Arthur, treated Julian like a visionary genius temporarily held back by bad luck. I was the reliable, invisible utility, expected to keep the lights on and never make a sound. When my father called an urgent family dinner on a Tuesday night, I knew something was wrong. But I never anticipated an ambush. I arrived at the house to find the dining table cleared of food. Instead, a thick, white envelope with red legal stamps sat dead center. Julian sat with his designer loafers propped up, swirling a glass of scotch like a man without a care in the world. Julian's client is filing a breach of contract suit, my father said, cutting straight to the bone. A luxury development project fell through because of bureaucratic delays. It's $180,000 to settle out of court, or Julian gets dragged through commercial litigation. That's awful, I said, eyeing Julian. How is he going to pay it? My father didn't hesitate. You are. The room went completely silent. You have that commercial property reserve sitting in your business account, my father stated as if he were managing my ledger himself. You'll wire the funds to Julian's account tomorrow morning. Family protects family. That is my entire life savings, I whispered, my voice trembling with disbelief. It's for my firm's permanent studio. Your brother's future is on the line, Claire, my father barked, leaning over the table. Pay it or you pack your things and lose this family forever. No, I said quietly. My father stared at me as if I had spoken in a foreign language. Excuse me. I'm not giving Julian a single cent, I said, my voice gaining strength. He created this disaster and he can face the consequences of it. The dining room erupted. Julian slammed his glass down onto the table, scotch sloshing over the polished wood. You selfish little bitch. You're sitting on hundreds of thousands of dollars while my life falls apart. You're betraying your own flesh and blood, Claire, my mother finally spoke, her voice thick with venom. After everything we sacrificed for you, this is how you repay us. You're tearing this family apart over greed. I sacrificed everything for myself, I replied, standing up so abruptly my chair scraped against the hardwood. And I'm done bankrolling his recklessness. I reached into my bag, unclipped my childhood brass key from the ring, and let it drop onto the table right beside the legal summons. The metal clinked sharply against the mahogany. Without another word, I turned my back on their shouting, walked through the entryway and shut the front door firmly behind me. The crisp night air hit my lungs like a shock of pure adrenaline. Sitting in my car, my hands were shaking but my mind was terrifyingly clear. I immediately pulled up my banking app and canceled the secondary corporate credit cards I had generously let my parents use for emergencies. I blocked their numbers from my personal line, needing 48 hours of absolute uninterrupted silence to breathe. The next morning, I contacted my attorney, Marcus Vance, to conduct a complete security audit on my company's assets and business filings. I wanted to ensure my firm was airtight in case my father tried any desperate legal maneuvers. 2 hours later, Marcus called me back. His tone was dead serious, completely devoid of his usual casual warmth. Claire, we have a massive problem, Marcus said, the rustle of papers coming through the speaker. I just pulled the public records on this $180,000 lawsuit. You need to come to my office right now. Julian didn't just mess up a contract. He used your identity to do it. When I unlocked my phone in Marcus's waiting room, the screen exploded with notifications. 17 missed calls from my father. 12 frantic voicemails from my mother. A dozen desperate text messages flashing across the display. Claire, answer your phone right now. There's been a mistake. Please, we need to talk. The arrogance from 2 nights ago had completely vanished, replaced by sheer panic. Marcus ushered me into his conference room and spread 3 thick folders across the glass table. Take a breath, Claire, he said, turning the primary lawsuit filing toward me. Because this is far worse than a standard family squabble. I looked at the header of the complaint. The plaintiff, a prominent commercial development firm called Blackwood Enterprises, wasn't just suing a rogue contractor. They were suing Henderson Design and Build LLC, a fraudulent entity Julian had registered using my architectural license number, my professional portfolio, and a forged copy of my signature as the lead guarantor. Julian landed a high-end commercial renovation bid by pitching your firm's credentials, Marcus explained, pointing to a highlighted addendum. He took a $180,000 upfront retainer, blew it on luxury rentals and failed side investments, and never delivered a single blueprint. When Blackwood caught on to the scam, they filed an emergency commercial action. By license. I felt the blood drain from my face. He put my entire career in jeopardy. He tried to, Marcus said calmly. But here's the real reason your father called you 17 times this morning. Julian needed collateral to finalize the agreement, so he forged your father's signature on an indemnity guarantee, tying Dad's retirement portfolio and their residential property deed directly to the contract. When you walked out and refused to wire the money, Blackwood's attorneys immediately placed a prejudgment freeze on your parents' primary assets. I stared at the paperwork in disbelief. Julian hadn't come to me asking to save his own neck. He had tricked our father into believing I was the only one legally exposed, while keeping the truth hidden. Dad had unknowingly signed away his entire life's pension for Julian's fraud. Julian thought you'd fold under family pressure and write the check without reading the fine print, Marcus added. Now the walls are closing in on them, not you. The glass doors of Marcus's law office swung open at precisely 2 o'clock. And my parents practically tumbled inside. Gone was the imposing, arrogant patriarch from the dining room table. My father looked haggard, his tie undone and his face sunken with terror. Behind him, Julian shuffled in like a condemned prisoner, eyes fixed entirely on the carpet. Claire, thank God you're here, my father pleaded, stepping forward with outstretched hands. We didn't know. Julian swore it was a mix-up with your firm's paperwork. If this freeze stays on my accounts, your mother and I lose the house. We lose my entire 40-year pension by Friday. You have to fix this. I didn't break it, Dad, I replied, my voice steady as stone. Julian did. Marcus cleared his throat and opened the heavy wooden double doors to the main boardroom. Waiting on the other side were 3 senior attorneys representing Blackwood Enterprises. Julian's knees visibly buckled. He thought this was a private family negotiation. He didn't realize Marcus had already arranged a formal pre-litigation deposition to clear my name. We all took our seats around the long conference table. Marcus opened my defense binder and methodically laid out the forensic digital logs. For the record, Marcus announced, addressing Blackwood's lead counsel, my client Claire Henderson had zero knowledge of Henderson Design and Build LLC. We have provided timestamped server IP addresses proving Julian accessed her professional portfolio from his own apartment. Furthermore, we have submitted certified affidavit reports from 2 independent forensic handwriting experts confirming that both Claire's signature and Arthur Henderson's indemnity guarantees were forged by Julian. The lead attorney reviewed the documents, nodding slowly. Then he turned his gaze directly toward Julian, whose smug facade had completely shattered into pathetic, silent tears. Mr. Julian Henderson, the attorney said, closing his folder with a heavy snap. These documents exonerate Claire Henderson completely. Your unauthorized actions constitute grand larceny and corporate forgery. We will be amending the lawsuit within the hour, dropping your sister entirely and pursuing maximum criminal and civil damages solely against you. My father sat frozen, staring at his golden boy in horror. The reality crashed down on him with absolute, suffocating finality. He had tried to destroy his innocent daughter to shield a criminal who had gleefully signed away his family's survival. Julian's life unraveled within weeks. To avoid immediate criminal prosecution for felony forgery, he signed a brutal restitution settlement with Blackwood Enterprises. He was forced to liquidate his luxury sports car, sell off his expensive designer watches, and surrender every dime he possessed. His reputation in the city was completely incinerated. No respectable firm would ever hire him again. For the first time in his life, my golden child brother had to get a real, grueling job just to make his mandatory court-ordered monthly payments. My parents managed to keep their house, but only barely. My father had to delay his retirement by another 7 years to cover Julian's lingering legal fees and rebuild the savings he had so blindly gambled on his favorite child. A month after the dust settled, my father showed up outside my office. He looked smaller, humbled, stripped of the booming arrogance that used to dictate our family dinner table. "Claire," he began, holding out a delicate silver pen he'd bought for my college graduation. "We made a terrible mistake. We let Julian blind us. Your mother and I want you to come home for Sunday dinner. We can put all of this behind us and start fresh as a family." I looked at the man who had ordered me to hand over my life's work without a second thought. "No, Dad," I said, keeping my hands firmly in my coat pockets. "You didn't make a mistake, you made a choice. You chose to sacrifice me when you thought Julian needed saving, and you only came looking for me when you needed a lifeline. I am not your safety net, and I never will be again." I turned around and walked back into my building. 2 weeks later, I signed the lease on a stunning, sun-drenched commercial studio in the Arts District, funded entirely by the savings I had fought so hard to protect. Sitting at my new desk, watching the afternoon light pour over my blueprints, the room was quiet, honest, and entirely mine. Choosing that door was the hardest thing I'd ever done, and the greatest freedom I'd ever found.